goodness, I'm in Cheshire and I'm here to look into a 1,000-year-old plus mystery. Hello, I am in a town that I don't know at all. It's a town called Sandbach, and I've come here today to check out what are described as some of the finest examples of ancient English crosses. So such crosses are important in our towns because they often represent the oldest post-Roman fabric, and yet here in Sandbach we have absolutely no idea who financed these impressive crosses or why, or where they originally stood. This is a story about the destruction of these ancient crosses, but also their resurrection. And we're going to get some deliciously crisp footage of these miraculous survivors. And we have 3 old pictures of the crosses in Sandbach, and we're going to try to recreate those views today. So Sandbach, that's a very English name, isn't it? I think all of the constituent parts of it come from Old English. This is an Anglo Saxon place. Now, Domesday has a priest and a church on the site of what is now St Mary's, but the earliest fabric in the church today is the 13th century. Yeah, I've just done that bit of voiceover there to mask the fact that my route to the market square doesn't make any sense. Oh Lord, I have never seen one as big as that. As you approach these things, you can really see why English heritage describe them as some of the finest examples of high crosses from Anglo Saxon England. Enormous. Good grief, absolutely enormous, or am I easily impressed? Nowadays, going by the form of the artistry on display here, these are dated to the early to the mid 9th century. You know, one of the things that's striking as I look at these, compared to the other crosses that we've looked at in this series, is I don't see any sign of Norse or Scandinavian in the design here. We're looking at pure English, pure Anglo-Saxon. And even I, a hopeless atheist, could see the strength of the Christian imagery, particularly on the large one where we've got things like the crucifixion. Even I can see that, and the Annunciation. On the smaller cross, it's less clear. They think it's showing a sort of a Christian community, the activities of a Christian community. Back in the day, when these crosses were thought to date back much earlier to 643 and the conversion of Peter, son of King Penda, the smaller cross was thought to show that. We don't think that now. He was converted up in Northumberland. It makes no sense that that would be represented here. And his real name, of course, wasn't Peter. I've had to do that PDF thing. You have to be careful on YouTube with certain words that sound like other words. Put his real name on the screen. But of course, nowadays, we don't think these crosses date back to the time of Penda and Peter. But what we can say about them is that the carving is exquisite, expensive, and fine. So that leads us to think that once upon a time here in this little town, there was something like a monastery or a minster that is completely lost to time. And that again is showing us how important these Anglo-Saxon crosses are. Very often they're the only thing left, the oldest thing left. And they do indicate that something important was here at some stage a long time ago that we've lost sight of nowadays. We also think they were carved by the same person. So we are talking master craftsmen with the fine artistry on display here on these ancient Sandbach crosses, which provides a fantastic segue to this. It's called The Book, and I've been sent a copy to review. The ultimate guide to rebuilding civilization starts with the basics, finding water, edible and inedible plants, working up through medicines, tools, building, generating electricity, even roads. I loved that. All the best inventions of humanity. Now, the artwork in here really is an amazing sort of combination of engineering drawings and medieval art on really high quality paper. It's fantastic. And it really is a unique thing, this book, sort of part encyclopedia, part history book, a work of art. I've never seen anything quite like it. And you can purchase a copy via the link in the description down below. Oh, and knowing what you lot are like, you're going to absolutely love this. There is a hidden quest within. 180 topics, over 400 plus pages, 200 plus unique illustrations, a top Kickstarter project, bestseller, and perfect gift. And some of you are going to love this, the addendum. I can't open this on YouTube. I'd definitely get struck off. Use Antiquarian 10 via the link in the description or scan the QR code to order your copy now. Let's try our first match-up with this 1903 picture by Thomas Coward. How retentive can I be? Well, look at that. It's largely unchanged. Obviously, people don't dress so well nowadays, and that building in the corner there seems to have gone. That bit is still there. I just couldn't quite get the angle to match up. I'm going to put that down to artistic license by Mr. Coward. But what I love is the detail on the crosses. So these stones, which I suspect relate to the restoration, which we'll come to shortly, are very clear, as are the wonderful distinctive socket stones. And even things like this little sloping stone in the base there. I'll get me anorak. So that's 1903 and 2026 matched up. But how long have these 9th century crosses actually been in this square? The earliest written record we have of them being here in the market square is 1585. So they've been here since at least 1585, we know that. And then it was in the 17th century when things got pretty sticky for the crosses, because it would appear that that was when they were damaged, smashed up, torn down, probably by Puritans raging at the Christian idolatry on display here. Well, that's the official narrative. Puritans, sometime presumably then between what, sort of about 1630 to 1660? Or do we push it back a little bit? We've got a backstop date of 1585 when William Smith's account of the undamaged crosses was written. Now, this colour engraving by John Byrne from a painting by William Alexander is dated circa 1810, and it shows the larger cross completely gone and the smaller one badly broken. So the patchy narrative tells us that the central part of the larger cross and fragments of the smaller were taken here by local top knob Sir James Crew, and then after his death they were moved here and then finally to here, being used as garden ornamentation. Right, we'll do our then and now, and of course the reinstatement of the larger cross now blocks the view of the old Bear Inn, but it's still there. Unlike this, that's the old town hall, I think. And it is an antiquarian that we have to thank for the crosses being restored to the market square here. George Ormerod managed to put all the pieces together and put them back as we see them today. And I had anticipated that they might be something of a Franken cross. But having a look at them, I think he did a really good job. There's a couple of bits I think you can see where they've sort of filled the missing gaps. But overall, I think that, they probably do look pretty similar to what they did before the Puritans arrived. We have another treat for you now, all you Anglo Saxon cross-shaft fanatics, because just outside the door to St Mary's Church, we have this magnificent collection. And a wonderful Ministry of Works sign tells us that they were moved here for their safety in 1956, but they did used to be clustered around our Sandbach crosses, and we could see them in an old picture. And there seems to be a Ministry of Works numbering system. I must try and find the pamphlet for that. I simply must find that. Another marvellous mystery then. We have these cross shaft fragments just over there in the market square. We have two of the finest Anglo Saxon high crosses in the whole of the country. And yet we do not know who created them, where they originally were and why. They would have been expensive. There was probably a school of craftsmen involved with it. What is under this Church of St Mary? Is it a monastery? Is it a minster? Isn't it amazing? In 2026, we just don't know. Now, one of the things that I really love is if you look at the 1810 picture, you will see that the base, the two huge socket stones, and indeed a good chunk of the smaller cross, remained here years and years after the Puritans did their worst. So we know that when they were restored to the exact place where they had been before the Puritans came along. And I absolutely love this base with these sort of cornerstones. The two huge socket stones are absolutely amazing. And in one of the other old pictures, if you look at it, you can actually see some of the stone fragments that now hang about outside the church. And according to the sign on Ye Old Black Bear, this quite distinctive pub that appears in some of those old pictures that we're matching up here today, this was built in 1634, so the pub would have been present when the crosses were smashed up by the Puritans. And there are no prizes for guessing who they allege also stayed at this pub. I stress, no prizes for guessing that.
Mr. WC21 asked me to say a few words about the Black Bear in Sandbach. The pub has a date of 1634 carved into one of the beams, along with the initials NRK, sadly the meaning of which have been lost in the mists of time. But it's likely that it's some reference to the first proprietor, and we know that throughout much of the history of the pub, it was owned by various barons' crew or lords' crew. The first of those, John Crew, would have been contemporary with that claimed establishment date of the pub, and he was also a Puritan and a parliamentarian during the Civil War, so it's tempting to think that if indeed the crosses were partly demolished or dismantled during that period, that he may have had a hand in it. Sandbach gets a mention in Richard Blome's Britannia in 1673. It mentions the crosses at that time.
Hang on, that was the stylus off the turntable sound effect, and Tweedy Pubs has gone all frozen. Something important just happened. 1673, and we're seeing a description of the crosses with no mention of damage. The first Baron Crew is going to die in 6 years, and we know the cross pieces ended up on his estate. So when were Puritans active? Well, we know it wasn't smashed during the Reformation because of that 1585 reference. The Committee for the Demolition of Monuments of Superstition and Idolatry came in during the interregnum, but state-sanctioned iconoclasm ended with the restoration of Charles II in 1660. Fun times were returning. And yet here we are in 1673 and the crosses are described as intact. Now, Blome could be doing some 17th century ye olde copying and pastying without checking, but it does seem a bit odd. Almost as though the local landed top knob, Baron Crew, fancied those old crosses outside his pub for a fairy grotto and helped himself with a bit of historical retrofitting to blame the Puritans. It's just a thought. Anyhow, back to Tweedy Pubs.
It also talks about the reputation Sandbach has for its ale. Sandbach ale used to sell in London for 12 pence a bottle, and adjusting for inflation and new money, that works out at £9.69 today, perhaps a bit steep for a bottle of beer. It was compared for its strength and its clearness to Canary, which was a fortified wine not dissimilar to sherry. That suggests that Sandbach ale had an ABV in excess of 15%. That's more than double the strength of Carlsberg's Special Brew. The earliest newspaper mention I found for the black bear in Sandbach comes in 1816, just a few years after that depiction by William Alexander. At this time, the lease for the pub was up for sale, and it also mentions that the former landlord had brewed his own ale on the premises, although it doesn't tell us whether it was following that tradition of Sandbach ale being of super strength. It also mentions that the freehold was owned by Lord Crewe still at that time.
Nice pump. And don't you think I look a little bit like Sir John Betjeman in my pork pie hat? I hope you do anyway. I'd like that. I enjoyed visiting Sandbach in the Kingdom of Mercia, and these antiquities are superb. No answers re origins, but I do agree with Jane Hawkes. They are of the same school, probably always together. And did you know that they would have originally been brightly painted with metalwork and jewellery, adding to that sense of church authority? I'm a bit suspicious about the crosshead on the smaller one. It's the only aspect that looks a bit Frankencross to me. Incidentally, we're working on a full range of collectible figurines for Christmas 2026. And I'm a bit suspicious about the Puritan story, suspecting a bit of top dog toff, Titchmask-esque trickery. And I look better than Betch in mine. I really hope you will come and see these crosses. They are splendid and remarkably close to the motorway as well. And if you do, you need to visit this place here. I got invited in by Renata, who works there. I had a free pizza and a free beer. Very gracious of them. And they've done a great job. This place has been empty for something like 18 years. They've just brought it back to life. We need to see more of that. So it's like my second sponsored segment. But if you come to Sandbach, check that out.
Raffaele.
It's like a Darren-sized doorway, that, isn't it? Anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed this week's video. We'll be back with another one next week. We'll see you then. Someone's really got it in for me, haven't they? It's the horn the other day. Horns. Now it's the bells. The bells.